So we have some updates for you with regard to that Biden ceasefire proposal, whether it is really an Israeli proposal, who is the primary obstacle to this proposal being implemented at this point. So got a few pieces for you. Let's put the first up on the screen. So you'll recall, and just keep this up on the screen for a minute here, guys. You'll recall yesterday we discussed with Omar Badar about what one of the key sticking points was between Hamas and Israel and what the Biden proposal was and what Israel is saying was actually in the proposal. One of the purported differences was with regard to the transition from phase one of the floated ceasefire to phase two. Now, the way Biden portrayed it was that in phase one, there would be a ceasefire, and that would continue indefinitely until the details of phase two were worked out. There was some reporting in the Israeli media, however, that said, no, we never said that the phase one ceasefire would continue indefinitely because that would just give Hamas an incentive to block the negotiations, not negotiate in good faith. Okay, so that brings us to Barak Ravid, a reporter for Axios, got his hands on the exact language of what the Israeli hostage negotiators had put forward with regard to phase one and phase two. And I'm just going to read this to you. The details, again, this is according to Barak Ravid, the specific language that was in the Israeli proposal. One piece said, no later than day 16, the commencement of indirect negotiations between the two sides to agree on the conditions for implementing stage two of this agreement, including those relating to the keys for the exchange of hostages and prisoners. And this should be concluded and agreed upon before the end of week 5 of this stage. That's the first stage. And then in another portion, the Israeli deal said all procedures in this stage, including the temporary cessation of military operations by both sides, aid and shelter effort, withdrawal of forces, etc., will continue in stage two so long as the negotiations on the conditions for implementing stage two of this agreement are ongoing. The guarantors of this agreement shall make every effort to endure that this indirect negotiations continue until both sides are able to reach agreement on the conditions for implementing stage two of this agreement. So effectively, and he indicates there as well, if you look at that language and you listen to what Biden had to say about how the stage one ceasefire will continue indefinitely until the stage two conditions are negotiated, it appears that he was accurately reflecting this Israeli proposal that came from the 3-member war cabinet. I will say, however, that the Jerusalem Post did indicate that the Israelis are parsing this a bit. They're saying that if they retain the right to resume their military campaign if they get the impression that negotiations are futile and serve only to bide time. So what has become really clear, though, I think at this point is whether or not the details Biden laid out were exactly the details that were in the original Israeli proposal. Bibi himself is doing everything he can to try to undermine and try to make sure that Hamas rejects this proposal moving forward. CNN did some reporting to that effect, effectively saying that he is getting his negotiators to make this deal sound as bad to Hamas as possible, hoping that they will reject the deal. And that has been sort of his play all the way along. Pretending to negotiate in good faith while doing what he can to undercut the deal. This is something that is many Israeli citizens who want to see the hostages returned have been very upset about, and that has become very clear to them as well. Yesterday, Matt Miller, State Department spokesperson, was asked if he expected that Israel would accept the deal, given the fact that clearly you have a lot of upset on that side within the government as to some of the details here. Here's how he responded to that question.
If Hamas says yes, that considering the coalition politics and the politics within Netanyahu's cabinet, that Israel would definitely go ahead with this.
So I certainly can't speak to internal Israeli politics, complicated enough for Israelis to speak to without the United States trying to weigh into them. I would say two things. Number one, this is a proposal from the Israeli government. So that's the first thing that's important. But number two, I think it is important to speak to the benefits of this proposal to all Israelis. And that's why you saw the president do it on Friday. That's why you've seen the secretary speak to some of these same themes and issues a number of times, including in Israel. And I will say the point that the president made in his remarks on Friday, that you've seen the secretary say a few times is that endless conflict in Gaza in pursuit of some idea of total victory is not going to make Israel safer. We agree with Israel that Hamas cannot run Gaza. We agree with Israel on Israel's right and Israel's obligation to pursue Hamas for the terrorist attacks of October 7th. But an endless conflict without a political plan forward is just going to leave Israel bogged down in Gaza, and it's going to exacerbate the security challenges that they face in the north of Israel. It's going to exacerbate the security challenges they face in the West Bank.
So in any case, I think what we can say really clearly right now, the Biden administration, number one, has staked a whole lot on this push. Number two, it is clear that the Israeli government offered something very close to approximating what Biden laid out. Number three, the Biden administration is really trying to frame all of the hangups and the problems here on the Hamas side when it's quite clear that Bibi does not want the war to end. He has never wanted the war to end. He's doing whatever he can to undercut these negotiations and try to place the blame on Hamas for them falling apart because, again, the far-right ministers that are really critical to his government coalition have already threatened to abandon him if this proposal is implemented. So that's effectively where we are right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty insane here because it is clear that that the Israelis are almost trying to wiggle themselves out of that proposal. But there also does appear to be a great international effort to pressure them to take it anyways. Not just from the U.S., a lot of the European countries with similar rhetoric here. They're like, hey, if Hamas takes it, then it is almost certainly going to be implemented. That's a big we'll see question. At the same time, let's put this up there on the screen. And this possibly could put some pressure on the Israelis. The Israeli army has now revealed that 4 hostages taken alive to Gaza were killed and are even acknowledging, quote, they may have been killed by IDF fire in Khan Yunis. So the 4 who are identified, very sad. 3 of them were either 80 years old or older, and another was 51. The bodies of all 4, they said, are being held together in Gaza. But the Haaretz report here, again, this is from the Israeli media, saying, quote, possibly by IDF fire as a result of their death. So the more that news comes out about more hostage deaths and possible hostage deaths, as well as stories about the IDF fire actually killing their own hostages, as opposed to the only time we ever had a hostage release was during that ceasefire, well, I think it could increase pressure there, Krystal, from the domestic populace on Netanyahu to actually end the war and accept the ceasefire proposal.
Yeah, that's right. And I think he's much more susceptible to domestic pressure than he is, frankly, to international pressure or condemnation, especially because the Biden administration has made it very clear they're not going to change their policy when it comes to, withholding weapons or using any actual leverage outside of just trying to, make this little clever move with Biden announcing the ceasefire deal that they had put on the table and trying to pressure them using rhetoric versus actual policy levers. So I do think that the biggest pressure on Bibi probably is domestic. And listen, the Israeli people are not stupid. They see that their loved ones are dying and are being killed in Gaza. Far more hostages have been directly killed by the IDF than rescued in the context of combat operations. As you mentioned, the only time there was significant hostage release was when you had a ceasefire deal. And actually, there was a family member of one of the hostages who directly said, like, Bibi, you have blood on your hands for their death. One of these men who was killed, very, I think you have to say likely, if they're even acknowledging it as a possibility, very likely by IDF fire. So I do think he's under pressure there. I think that's why he has to at least posture like he's engaged in some sort of a ceasefire deal or hostage deal negotiation, even as, and this is again according to CNN reporting, so, they're very sympathetic to the Israeli side and very sympathetic to the Netanyahu government, even as CNN is reporting that Bibi is trying to make this deal sound as unappealing as possible through his instructions to his negotiators, to Hamas, by emphasizing that the war is going to continue unless all of their conditions are met and Hamas has to be completely destroyed. by emphasizing those things to try to put the onus on Hamas and make it look like Hamas is the ones blowing up the deal when Bibi is trying to, as I think you put it really well, wiggle his way out of this as best as he possibly can. At the same time, there's an interesting political dynamic here as well, because we talked yesterday about how the bipartisan leadership in the House and the Senate officially invited Bibi to come address Congress in spite of the fact that he is imminently facing arrest warrants for war crimes from the ICC. And liberal Zionists in Israel are furious about this move. We can put this up on the screen. This was an opinion piece in Haaretz. So the headline here kind of says it all. Inviting Netanyahu to D.C., Democratic leaders stabbed Israel's liberals in the back. Part of the copy here reads, there is nothing pro-Israel about this invitation. It is not pro-Israel to side with Netanyahu's party against the brave families of the hostages who are fighting to secure a deal for their release. It is not pro-Israel to help Netanyahu address Congress while knowing that since October 7th, he's not found time to meet with any of the Israeli communities invaded by Hamas under his watch. It is not pro-Israel to help Netanyahu help Trump's election campaign just a month and a half after Biden led an international coalition that helped Israel avert huge damages from Iran's ballistic missile attack. Schumer and Jeffries probably got nice phone calls from friends at AIPAC for co-signing the invitation. But they and their Jewish Democratic supporters should know how all this looks from here. They have stabbed Israel's liberal forces in the back. So they're not happy. In Israel, the more moderate or the folks who are on the side of bringing the hostages home, who are interested in some sort of a ceasefire deal, they are extremely enraged by the fact that Bibi would be invited. And Saagar, you should share some of this. So Biden just gave this Time magazine interview this morning that you've been reading, where he's been running cover for Bibi, because he even got asked this question about, hey, Trump was critical of Bibi and the failures on October 7th. What do you think about that? And he was effectively running cover for him, saying, well, you can't blame just one person. And, you really can't lay the blame on his soldiers. Like, what are you doing here?
Yes, I have it here in front of me. Trump has said Netanyahu is rightfully criticized for October 7th. Do you believe he bears some responsibility? I don't know how any one person has that responsibility. He was the leader of that country, so therefore it happened. But he wasn't the only one that didn't pick it up. That's why there's got to be my major disagreement with him is after what happens after Gaza is over. So basically he did say, or you refused to criticize him for what happened on October 7th. And in the grand scope of all of things that you could criticize Bibi for, that seems like the one that is the easiest politically to say, yeah, clearly there was a problem here. And instead he moves past that. And then he says, my only real disagreement with him is what happens the day after, not conduct of the war, and not even what happened on October 7th. So in some ways, like, Trump has been more critical here of Bibi's handling than President Biden has, which is shocking. Yeah. It's totally shocking.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, Trump, so there's a report this morning that he's, courting Miriam Adelson's millions and millions of dollars, and probably agreed to just allow Israel to annex the West Bank in exchange for that donation. That was basically her price, what she was asking for in exchange for funding his campaign. So let's not have any illusions about Donald Trump. Whatever criticism he has of Bibi Netanyahu is driven by petty personal grievances, but he's made it quite clear that he will be as aggressively pro-Israel as he possibly can be. And he was that in his first administration as well. But to go back to Biden, listen, we all know at this point, he is an ardent Zionist. It is deeply ideological for him. It is locked into his old man brain. There is no changing it. We also have reports from previously dealings with Netanyahu where he was telling him, I'm one of your only friends, when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were trying to put a little bit of pressure on him, and he was directly undermining his own, president's foreign policy to tell Bibi, to help Bibi out at the time. So there's something weird going on there too. But even just as a human being and a man who is facing re-election under very difficult circumstances at this point, Bibi Netanyahu wants you to lose. He is directly trying to undercut you. This is talked about very openly, by the way, in the Israeli press. It's, treated as some sort of a secret or something you can't really say here, but this is commented on very openly, as I just read in the Israeli press. He wants Trump to win. he is doing part of his strategy, why he wants the war continue, is for his own political ambitions, but also because he knows the war continuing is bad for Biden and he would prefer to have Trump as president of the United States. So even just on like a personal level, what are you thinking about here running cover for this man? And again, you know, the liberal Zionists in Israel, who are hardline in many, many ways, they are not appreciative of this stance towards Bibi. I found that quote from the cousin of one of these Israeli hostages that was likely killed by the IDF. She said, "You were able to bring back so many people who were alive a long time ago. The blood is on your hands," talking to Bibi, and that of all the members of the cabinet, everyone, the blood is on the hands of all of you murderers. So that's how they feel about Bibi and are not looking fondly on, you know, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Joe Biden cozying up to him, inviting him to address Congress. At the same time, let's put this up on the screen. So the U.S. is circulating a draft UN Security Council resolution. And this is just very interesting. Calling on Hamas to accept the hostage deal. Again, posturing like Hamas is the only obstacle to some sort of a deal being struck when there is ample reporting. It's just so clear that Bibi is doing everything he can to, you know, undercut this deal and make sure that there is never an end to the war because it benefits him politically. You know, you can read the details here, but that's basically the TLDR is they welcome the new deal. They call for Hamas to accept it and reiterate their unwavering commitment to the vision of a two-state solution, which is hilarious since the U.S. takes every opportunity possible at the UN to vote against a recognition of Palestine and an actual two-state solution. But nevertheless, this is the Security Council resolution that is being drafted right now. Saagar, no guarantees that this would pass because we don't know if Russia and China, which both have permanent Security Council seats, whether they would potentially veto this resolution since it is, you know, framed in this kind of one-sided way.
Yeah, we're basically in a limbo status right now. We're kind of waiting to see both the response really from both sides. I understand that President Biden had a call with the Qatari emir. They're trying to pressure Hamas to accept the deal immediately. We'll really just see probably in the next couple of days whether this materializes to anything or whether it will be a massive humiliation to the United States, unable to get the deal done on either direction. I think that's really where it stands right now. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.